Well, hello everyone. This is Koos, and we have a special episode here today. I think since you've met me online about 18 months ago, and those who knew me before in life, not on the internet, will know that I have a real dislike in Switzerland. I think it's a disgusting place with utterly disgusting people. So much so that I started calling it Swineland. In other words, a place where swine lives. And I don't mean it in any sense of a word in a nice way. And a lot of you asked me, Koos, why? It's such a beautiful country. It is so wonderful. Such high salaries, the living standards are so high, so beautiful. Once again, people keep on talking about that. And I thought to myself, unless you actually lived there and you were treated the way I was treated, and I will explain to you shortly what happened, what turned me so much against this country, I don't think you'll understand. But I need to stress something. This is my personal views. This is not a legacy view. It's not the view of anybody else except me. I want to stress that. And there were some people here who advised me never to make this video, to let it go. There comes a time in life when you have to actually make a stand, when you have to stand up and to be counted. I think there's a time in life when you have to warn people about certain things, and if you don't do that, you're failing in your duty. And this is what this video is about. I will never advise you to go to Swineland, ever. I will actually ask you never to spend any money on any Swiss product. And if you really wish to go to Europe, see the Alps, see the beautiful places, man, go to France or go to Italy, where you will find nice people who will actually be nice to you. Don't go to Swineland, because they will definitely treat you quite nicely in the beginning, but I warn again, it's different when you live there and you get to know it. And I also want to say, yes, it's beautiful, but God created that beautiful country. He created those mountains, those forests, those waterfalls, the rivers, not the swine. They're just there. And then, of course, some of you will say to me, but because you're married to a Swiss woman, now does this add up? Now, let me say to you, even though Rebecca has dual nationality, in the sense that she holds both an American and a Swiss passport, and the mobby is Swiss, and I really love my mobby-in-law. She's a wonderful woman, one of the odd ones out in Swineland. There are a few. Rebecca is in no way Swiss. If she was Swiss, she would definitely have not married me. Simply because when we met, I was quite poor. In fact, I still am quite poor. I was living with my mom in Bloemfontein. I was writing books. I was writing one book a month out of boredom. This is after I came back from Nigeria with a high-paying job. Got back to South Africa. I simply couldn't find a job. The story of most white men in that country. And so I ended up living with my mom. I was about to immigrate to the US with my late wife. Sadly, she got ill. And of course, the US embassy would not allow me to go to the US for many reasons, none of which they explained to me. And that's the way it is. So I stayed with my mom for 8-9 years, living basically in a back room, writing the books, which nobody read. Very few people read them, which is a pity because they're really good books. And I see the hand of God in that. I actually took care of my mom in those years. I saved her life numerous times. Where she got ill, when you get elderly, you get ill. You become frail. I took care of that. I'm proud of that. Point I'm making, though, is Rebecca has what you call a great heart, which is common in American women. I know. My late wife was an American girl, so I do tend to think I know something about them. Great heart, positive outlook in life, totally not what the Swiss is. In fact, Rebecca didn't fit in Switzerland, even though she lived there for almost 30 years, 27 to be precise. And even though she speaks the languages, they just wouldn't accept her. Even though she's got a Swiss mom, doesn't matter. She's not part of a little tribe. They have this thing about some psychologists, and I don't go to psychologists, I think it's crap. Well, not always. There are certain things they can actually do, but I don't go to them. I have no need. Some psychologists say to me it's because they live in these valleys. And because they live in these valleys, they form a close-knit society, and therefore they're suspicious to anybody else outside them. So think of it as a small bunch of tribes in every valley who's now suddenly trying to create a country. And think of them as very nasty, sour type of people, they have to be pissed out of their minds to smile. They don't do such things. When they get onto a bus, you always find crying children, as well as on a train, as well on an aircraft. Always. It struck me. And I think it has to do with a passive aggressiveness. But anyway, that's the story with Rebecca. Rebecca is not Swiss. In fact, if you tell me somebody is Swiss, I see it as a grave insult. You can just as well tell me you're a baboon or something like that. I mean, it is nothing to be proud about. But let us start at the beginning. I want to tell you my story. And I might even put this in a book as well. It doesn't take me longer than 2-3 weeks to write a 400-page book. I have that talent. And I might do it. But for now, I know your time is limited. Let me say where it started to you. In the first place, if you go to Switzerland or any of these countries, you need a visa. Now, that is something I feel strongly about as well, because, South Africans, well, let us call it not the first world countries, are not treated on an equal footing when it comes to visa. You have to do an application. They don't. If a Swiss or a swine person wants to come to South Africa or virtually anywhere in the world, he just arrives. It's not a problem. At the very most, you would get like a visa on arrival, but it's almost pro forma. It's not a big problem for them. They can go wherever they want to. So they're not being treated the same way they treat other people. And to me, that is wrong. As far as I'm concerned, if you say to me, I need a visa to go to your country, and you want to know everything about me back to my grandparents, and you are as stupid as the Americans to write in your application form, or they used to, I don't know, but they used to have a question there, do you have any training in making bombs? Acties toch. As if a terrorist is going to say yes to them. It's anyway, I think I'll make a video on America as well, but really, if you want to know how badly the US military really is, go and read GMJ's book, American Military Might Debunked. And then go and look at Ukraine right now and see how those American weapons are being shot out. And look in a few months from now what happened to the Western tanks in Ukraine if they ever arrive. You'll see with this GMJ fellow when he wrote the book, warning, to say to NATO, you're not as good as you think you are. In fact, you're lacking in almost every sense of a military sense, of any military type of vehicle, aircraft. You're lacking in it. You're behind. The Chinese and the Russians and even the South Africans are ahead of you in certain technologies. Most technologies, in fact, people laughed at him. Well, like most of his predictions in his books, it's turning out to be true. So to summarize to you, as far as I'm concerned, is if you want me to get a visa to go to your country, you bloody well will be treated the same way when you come to my country. That is fair in law, it's fair under international law. Of course, it's not happening. It will never happen because of weak politicians and money, greed. A few years ago, the ANC actually did something good. And I think it's one of two things they actually did well. The first thing which they did well is that yellow line, which is now that reflective stripe thing, which you find on all big trucks at the back. That's a good thing. You see those damn trucks much further than you used to. And the last time I drove on the N1 to Cape Town, I think I counted more than 400 of these trucks in less than a few hours. It's amazing because the railway system is stolen. The second good thing which ANC tried to do is to prevent the smuggling of children. In other words, white slavery, or some people just call it trafficking, human trafficking. South Africa is one of the great hubs, especially Cape Town, where children are being smuggled through on their way to some kind of a sex place where they get abused physically. Now, I don't want to get graphic, but I've been in the police, I've seen these cases. Those parts of these children are not designed for a man's thing. And of course, when these type of sickos do what they do, it's a very bloody affair. There's real damage caused. It's very hurtful. And they do these things. And so South Africa, in the form of a government which everybody hates so much, they did the right thing by demanding that if there's a minor child coming through the South African borders, you need permission from both parents, unless one parent, of course, is dead. Immediately. The hospitality industry were up in arms. They were so angry about it, so angry. Because, this will make some people not to come to the country and then they will lose some money. I feel nothing for your money you're going to lose if a child is saved. Really, you should get your priorities in order. Having said that, there's no chance in this world of South Africa ever having the manhood, as well as the rest of the nations, to tell places like Switzerland, the US, the first world countries, the West, the colonial masters, to tell them, you don't just come to us. You want me to explain to you what my grandfather did and where he was born and where he died and where I served in the military, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do the same to you. There's nothing wrong with that in law, but of course, it doesn't happen. So I had to get a visa, and I had to go to Hell Affairs, which is something else, Home Affairs, and visit the embassy. It was very, very frustrating. One of the forms I wanted was a long birth certificate, not a small one. Getting that thing was almost impossible. I was very lucky to get it, and I'm not even going to tell you how I got it. And then I have a word of warning on something else, and you can go to the Legacy legal playlist. There's 14 videos there where I actually made short videos for you from a legal viewpoint. Remember, I was an attorney for more than 2 decades. So I do know something about the law. And I made a whole bunch of short videos just to advise you, divorce, death, contracts, things like that. And one of the videos I spoke about was getting married in South Africa to a foreigner. Now, let me tell you, it's a bloody nightmare, because you can't just marry the love of your life if she or he happens to be a non-South African citizen. And for that, you have to thank all the corrupt officials who has given fake marriage certificates basically to every second, let me not call the country there, it's in the east, coming to South Africa on their way to the UK, to London, that wonderful place, the UK, which I can make a video about as well, but I won't. And now it is so that before you get married to your loved one, you actually have to go to the Department of Health Affairs, and you have to convince these corrupt officials that you are actually really in love, and you have to, or you want to get married because of love and nothing else. That was a story which I don't ever want to repeat again. I remember Rebecca saying to this fellow, and he's a good man, he really helped us. I even called one of my books after him. She said to him, sir, you know what, I'm not going to give up my American and Swiss passport for a South African one. So it's really not that important to me. We almost didn't get married. We almost lived in sin. But of course, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. There's no in the way in the world I will do that. It's against my religious beliefs. I don't point fingers. That's me. It's for yourself to figure that one out. Now, I eventually got this this visa. It cost really thousands and thousands of rands. It took months to do so. From an intelligence viewpoint, it's one of the most stupid things we can do, simply because we have an over-reliance on technology, especially the Americans and NATO countries. So they cut themselves off. You know how the embassies look like. You can't really walk into an embassy. You have to go through the security, which is normally private security, and then behind them you find the Marines or whatever is standing there. Switzerland, even, yeah, when I went to the one in Pretoria, they were building bulletproof glass. I just couldn't understand it at that stage. I mean, we're neutral, we don't be harmless, we don't piss off people. I fully understand now why they have actually bulletproof glass. They actually need it. And something strange happened to me at the Swiss embassy. I actually got the visa. It's a one-entry visa where you get to the country and then the actual process starts. It's just an entry visa. It's nothing more based on a spouse. They can't really refuse it, to be honest. From a legal viewpoint, they have no right to refuse it. As long as you're married to one of their citizens, even if they don't accept their citizens as their citizens, they don't actually like women in that country. I'll get to that. They can't really refuse you, and I knew that. But when I walked out of the embassy, something very strange happened. I stood talking to the gate guard, who by this time I made friends with him. Very nice guy. And suddenly an not old, let me call a guy older than me, about 10 years on me, arrived there, grey hair, everything, very correct, very Swiss. Speak with a German Swiss accent. They can't even speak proper German. It is Swiss German. It's like a dialect. It's not proper German. And he asked me a very simple few questions, but very strange questions to me. All sorts of alarm bells went off in my head when that happens, because I do come from the shadows. I'm not going to explain that any further. Just say I come from a world where I don't trust people. So I'm standing there. I'm quite happy with life now. I've got my visa. It's cost me about 40,000 rands to get, but I've got it. And one of the reasons why it cost so much, I was using my mom's little car to drive to Pretoria and back from Bloemfontein a few times with us, and the engine blew. And this was a Daewoo Matiz. Don't ever buy Daewoo Matiz, ever. Sorry, that is a mosquito who just died. And even though the car had less than 100,000 kilos on the clock, I was about 10 years old at that stage. My mom just drove to Spar and back at that. She's deceased now, but that's how it was. The engine blew, engine ceased. So much so for quality, huh? So much so for Chevrolet, who took over Daewoo. So anyway, to make a long story short, I had to replace the engine, and that's why the money is so high. I know there's people who's going to watch this with hawk eyes to see if they can find any type of mistake I've made here. You know what? Do what you please. I don't care. And I stood talking to this old man. He says to me, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, sir, I'm here to join my wife in Switzerland. I'm very happy about it. I'm really grateful." And so he says to me, "Tell me, what will you do if you're kicked out of that country?" And I thought to myself, this is a strange question. Yes, I've been kicked out of other countries before for various reasons, official reasons, which has to do with the shadows. But I've never operated against Switzerland. I have no animosity with Switzerland. In fact, I don't know the place. I don't care about the place. I've never been there. And it was a very, very strange question to me. What was even more strange is when they issued the passport to me, I saw this guy. I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman, because, they look the same there. I saw this thing, taking my passport, looking at the picture on the computer, and I couldn't, of course, see what's on the computer. And then this thing walked to another thing, and they came back, and the two swine stood there looking at it, and then they look at me, and then they asked me to sit down, and then they look at me again, and I thought, oh God, here we go. This is like the time in the US Embassy when two Marines escorted me out. May I say two fat Marines? They were stupid as bricks. Not me actually saying that. You will find many guests on Legacy, who will tell you they worked with the US Marines and US forces, and most of them say they are as stupid as bricks, incapable of thinking outside the box. But anyway, that's another story. So I knew that something was triggering there, and they were keeping me back. So when I walked out, this guy was waiting and he was asking me that question. And I said to him, I looked him in the eye because I actually recognize him. I know who he is. And I said, Colonel, I'll start a war. If you kick me out of that country without reason, there's going to be consequences. Fine. And then he just laughed a bit embarrassingly and he pissed off and I left. And I was now quite happy calling Rebecca, saying to Rebecca, wow, I've got the visa, we're going to get this ticket now. And it was with a sad heart. I knew when I was leaving that I'm leaving my mom behind. And within 18 months, my mom was dead. The rest of my ex-family tried to take care of her. I don't even want to go into it. It's a disgusting story. But I felt I wanted to be with my wife and carry it on. And my mom said to me, Koos, I will never stand in your way. You're newly married. Obviously, you want to be with your wife. You two are happy. I love Rebecca as much as my own daughter. You go to a country and you start afresh. And so I arrived thinking of Ruth, a book in the Bible called Ruth, 1 verse 16. And I will read it to you from the King James Version. I don't read any other Bible in English whatsoever. Why? Because they were changed. They were changed, and therefore what you read now is basically the Jesuit Douay Bible. That's what you're reading when you read the new translations. Small little changes, but I can give you 38 pages of changes which were made. And these changes will definitely lead you to a different path of one away from God. And so I read the King James Version. I don't read anything else. I'm not interested in reading anything else. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee, or return from following after thee. For wherever you goest, I will go, and wherever thou lodgest, I will lodge. My people shall be my people, and thy God shall be my God. In other words, what Ruth has said here to her mother-in-law when they were moving back to Israel is to say, I'll go with you. Even if I'm a stranger in your country, I will accept your people, will be my people, your God will be my God. And I believe that is what happened because King David came from the line of Ruth. Also, I knew that right next to Lausanne in Switzerland, that's the French part of Switzerland, right next to Lake Geneva, is Clarence. Now, Clarence, you will say in English as Clarence. And that is where Paul Creer went after the Dutch kicked him out. And that's where he died. But I guarantee you, if you ask any of the swine about this history of South Africa, they was they don't know. They have no idea whatsoever. They are basically very stupid people. Don't let their ears fool you. They are not that clever. And so I arrived at Geneva. It was a long flight through Turkey and Istanbul. I arrived at Geneva and I'm not impressed. In the first place, we get off at this international airport. They don't even have one of these walkways. Now you have to take the bus to the airport. How pathetic. But thinking back about it makes a lot of sense. You know, coming from Turkey, it's not a country I admire much. So, yeah, you're not good enough to actually get one of these walkways. I fully understand it now, thinking back about it. But I was not impressed because I thought to myself, okay, yes, this is this major city, and they don't even have a proper airport. And of course, some people will say to me, yeah, but Koos, you know, there's mountains. I don't give a shit whether there's mountains or not, excuse my language. If you want to say you're a world-class city, I want to see it, and I haven't seen it. But anyway, made my way through customs, fully expecting actually to be denied entry. I still remember what that Colonel Wimmer said to me. But they were fairly nice. They studied my passport very carefully, more carefully than anybody else's, I have to say. I was very friendly. But I was prepared. If I have to go back, I will leave. And but they let me in. I actually had no choice, legally speaking. And so I met Rebecca and we took a train to Lausanne. And then we walked another mile to where we lived. And then it was all good and well. A few days later, now I have to go and register myself. Now, there are some people here who would say that the old South Africa, apartheid South Africa, was actually a police state. And I suppose for some people it was a police state, but I was in the police at that time. And I can tell you, we were very law-abiding policemen. Yes, there were people who were a bit rammy-cat. Most of them were dealt with. You got caught that you did something wrong, well, you know, jail time, even execution could have followed. So it was a country of laws. I don't think it was a police state, not at all. But we can argue that it depends on where you come from. But in Switzerland, like in many places in Europe, actually Germany as well, and this took place under the Nazis and even before, you actually have to register yourself with the police. You have to go to the police and say to them, I live in this flat in this street. And my wife and children also live in this flat in this street. If that doesn't put off alarm bells in your head, man, there's something wrong with you. It's got nothing to do with the police where you live until such time that you do something wrong. This is ridiculous beyond belief. And I said that. I said, wow, this is a police state. Now, why do you need this information? And of course, the swine is not capable of arguing or capable of having a reasonable argument or a reasonable discussion. They don't have that. It's like, that is the law. You will do that. You will know that. Okay, fuck you. Here's the things, no problem. Here I am. Then Rebecca left and and I'm standing alone there. Here approaches a woman to me. She says to me, I need to sign a letter. She can't speak English, but sort of. I say, okay, what's the letter? Let me read it. In the letter stands, I have to learn to speak French in 1 year or I'm deported. 1 year. Now, in general, I don't have a big problem with that. When you come to South Africa in the old days, you had to learn Afrikaans. I think of officers like Jan Breitendag and Dick Lord. Both of them had English wives. And both of them suffered because the English wife had to learn to speak Afrikaans very quickly. And even with any officer joining the South Africa or any immigrant, you had to learn to speak Afrikaans. And no problem with that, it's fine. So no problem with learning to speak French, even though, of course, I know nothing of French at that stage. And I said to her, okay, well, can I learn German? Because, you know, German is closer to my Afrikaans. No. You have to learn French, because, you know, you're on a French part now. I had to sign this letter, which I signed with a fake signature, and I put UP underneath it. She's too stupid to know that means it stands for under pressure. It has no legal standing. And they would not give me a copy of this letter either. But it happened, I assure you, it happened. So I go to Rebecca, I say, well, now I'm in trouble. I have to learn to speak French. She says, why? I said, because I signed a letter. If I don't do it, I'm going to get kicked out. He says, you won't be kicked out. You can't be kicked out. You're married to me. And that's probably the truth. But now there's a lot of pressure on me to learn to speak French. And what annoys me most is they have this idea that I actually immigrated to it. You know, that I want to become Swiss, get a Swiss passport. Let me tell you, I will never get a Swiss passport or any other passport than a South African one. Why? Because when you walk around in a place like Africa, which I still consider my home because we're going to move back there at some stage, perhaps not South Africa, but somewhere in Africa, I don't want a passport like that. It makes you target number one, especially if you are an American passport. You know what? You better look behind you. And the swine, I hope. And French, strangely enough, is not a hard language to learn. Je parle français, mais pardon, je parle. I just said to you, I do speak French, perhaps, but not well, not good, but I speak. A lot of English actually comes from French. French was there first, the way I figured it out. And from there on came English. So it's not that hard. But of course, this placed really a lot of pressure on me, which again, I say to you, I don't really have a big problem with that. It is natural to most countries. But then I met somebody. Who came, same story as mine. He came from, I think, New Zealand or Australia, married a Swiss woman, and cannot speak a word of French. And unlike me, he had no degrees. He didn't write a single book. He's not an expert on counterterrorism and counter-espionage. And he's definitely not, as fanatical about my Christian beliefs as I am. And guess what? He doesn't have to learn to speak French. But I have to. Why is that? Is it because I'm from Africa? What other reason can there be? And if that is the case, then it's racism. Why? Because you're treating me different from somebody else just because I'm from Africa. That makes you racist. So it's a racist country. If you see how they dislike black people in that place, you'll be shocked. They were always anti-apartheid people in their time. But deep down, no, they like their white skins, actually. It's also, I found out very, very quickly, it's extremely expensive country. In fact, yes, you do get paid very well. In South African terms, you're getting paid extremely well. But since you live in this expensive place, you won't live well. In fact, you're going to live substandard. If you live in a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs in South Africa, you have a lifestyle which a swine can only dream about. They don't have that kind of money. So what they do is, at their old age, they normally immigrate to a country like Thailand, even South Africa down there, Cape Town, and then they live high because they can afford it. But in their own country, they live like bloody paupers. I feel actually sorry for the young Thai woman here who tries so hard to catch a swine, get in, that she can leave the country, go to there. She's going to be deeply disappointed in the lifestyle. You're very lucky if you have more than a small 2-bedroom flat with a silly, stupid little kitchen. Having a carport is a luxury, things like that. Really, it's not a country where you can live well, unless you are super rich and you really have good money. It's also so very interesting. I read a report that something like 90% of all expats, these are the people who come from other countries to work for places like Nestle. And we'll talk about Nestle. 90% of them say they will never go back to Switzerland, ever. There's reasons for that. They also even have a tax there on a copy machine. Very much like I understand the SABC now wants to have a tax on computers and anything which is capable of going onto the internet. Well, whether they're going to get that, I don't know. But in Switzerland, they most certainly do have a tax on a copy machine. Even if you don't use it to make copies, but just as a printer, they don't care. You have to pay it. And of course, it's a very high tax country as well. And you get nothing back. That's the worst thing. You don't even get a medical. You get nothing. You have to buy your medical like you would do in South Africa. And the doctors are not that good. I actually went to a few of them. Let me tell you, I was not impressed with them. I asked a few questions I couldn't answer. I met a few of their lawyers, same story, as dumb as bricks, incapable of arguing in law because they don't have to. They work on a system where the law is there. They don't have to argue. It's either left or it's right. There's no in between. It's also, of course, one of the most corrupt countries in the world because of their secrecy laws. But the secrecy laws are only applicable on certain things. I know there are some people here who say they are using Proton Mail, one of these companies which says they are based in Switzerland, they have the strictest privacy laws. Man, you're bullshitting yourself. You're bullshitting yourself. If that company like Proton, and they admitted it, go and do a bit of research. If that company gets a court order from a Swiss court to reveal, whatever he needs to reveal, he's going to reveal it. He's not even going to inform you about it. That is such so much bullshit. The people themselves are found to be passive-aggressive, actually cowards. They're not the biggest of people. In fact, the average Swiss male looks like a little dwarf almost, in relating to normal South Africans. He's a small man. And there's nothing impressive about him either. He doesn't have any guts. It's like the rest of Western Europe, they were unmanned after the Second World War, especially the Germans. They become cowards. I've seen it more than once. If you get up and you walk towards him, purposefully, he retreats. He will run. He puts in his pants. He's scared. He doesn't want to get physical. He doesn't understand that part of it. And it's my theory that that's why the Swiss are actually quite nice people when they are outside the country. Because if they have their little Swiss manners in a different country, they might get beaten up quite badly. There's nothing brave about it. And you see their passive aggressiveness also when you stand at the robot or a traffic light. Now, we have a strange system because you go on yellow, not on green. And if that thing turns yellow, you have to go. If you wait 1 second, they start pressing the horn. But if you get out of that car and you walk to this guy, he pisses in his pants. He's so scared. He doesn't know what to do. It's pathetic to see men like that, actually. And then you would think of Switzerland having extremely good roads. In fact, no. There's building going on their roads all the bloody time. They have very bad roads. The higher you go into the mountains, it's narrow. There's no safety barriers. The car can easily roll down the mountains easily. It's bad. There's even potholes. Yeah, I know. Many of you don't know this. They have no respect for foreigners unless they want your money, of course. And they have no common courtesy. I recall I went to one of their shops. It's called Migros. And like all their shops, it's actually quite pathetic. And you don't really find a big mall type of place where you find these little cramped European type of shops, very, very expensive. Sour people working there. You have to pack your own groceries, which is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, if you take more than 1 second to do so, you're getting the Swiss look, And then if you look the guy back and you make a move to it, he pisses off because he's scared. Same. It's a shame how the lack of manhood is something incredible. But they have no such thing as common courtesy. I remember standing at Migros, and there's this old guy. He must be 80 years old. And he bought some maize. And I was trying to put the maize in his bag because there you walk everywhere. It's not like the rest of the world. They are very backwards. And so so I said to him, he didn't have the strength to take this and put it inside his bag, in his trolley. So I walked up to him and I said to him, friend, sir, can I help you? Do you require assistance? Now, my French isn't good, but I try to speak in his language. That's why I get extremely pissed off when you try to speak in somebody's language and that guy, instead of helping you or correcting you in a nice way, just have something to say about it. Just last week, I banned a guy because he had something to say about Rousseau Swart speaking English. And according to him, it wasn't good enough for him, even though the rest of the world completely understood what Rousseau was saying. And Rousseau was speaking English because he's a 3-2 battalion officer, and he was hoping that his men, his former soldiers, would actually be able to understand what he was saying about them. That's the reason why, but this idiot, of course, wouldn't think like that. And the same with this old goon there at Migros. He just looked at me like this, with after hatred. I mean, they just become like this little monsters. And he says, "Nee comprendre," which means I don't understand, or no understanding, something like that. And of course, I looked at him and I thought, fuck you, and I walked away. And now I'm standing there, suddenly the rain comes with a little bit of snow, there's a big wind. He's trying there with his wife to open his umbrella. The umbrella twists up like this. The maize is getting wet. And I said, thank you, Lord. Thank you. Because I was about to beat the hell out of him. He has no manners. And that is very typical of the Swiss. They have no common courtesy whatsoever. They do not understand the word common courtesy. They are not friendly unless they talk. And they do like smoking. If you walk anywhere in Switzerland, you'll pick up these bloody cigarette butts. Even in the forest, it is a plague. It's not clean. Now, some of you may talk to me about the Swiss Army knife. Yes, I have one. Rebecca gave me one, a very nice one, big one like this. But do you know that the first one which came out, the original one, had a wine bottle opener? And so even then they had a drinking problem. And they don't have as much money as you think. The statistics will show you that about a quarter of them can't pay their bills. Again, you have a nation of two. Like most nations, you have a very, very rich, and then you have those who barely makes it. And you have some kind of a middle class, not a big one. You should not fall into the trap to think, all right, a packer in the Migros will earn about 4,500 francs a month. Okay, that's about 90,000 rands a month. Oh, that's fantastic. Go and live there and find out that 4,500 is not going to bring you anywhere. In fact, you will be seen as poor. Then they talk about something which they call qualité suisse. In other words, a Swiss quality. That is just as much as bullshit. It's simply overpriced. Their products are no better than any other product. They don't like eye contact. They don't like to invite people into their cliques. And they have a saying which is especially annoying. Are we not lucky to be born Swiss? You know, yes, you are actually very lucky to have been born Swiss because you would be a bloody loser in any other place in the world. There is, and that's a good thing, I suppose, they do take care of their losers. If there's a guy who doesn't want to work or who doesn't want to, who have some kind of a fake medical excuse, the system will take care of this person. Sadly, we're getting more and more. So it's going to run out of money. At some stage, it's going to break. And they're going to start losing money on this. And then, of course, a lot of people actually go there to live off a system, to live off a dull system. Sadly so. Not everybody is as honorable as me. I always said I will not take 1 cent of you. I never had to. Thank God. And even if I had to, I wouldn't. And of course, I don't want their citizenship. I want nothing to do with the country. They are horrible people. The horrible. That is what they are in French. We also have a system where that you follow the law slavely. Absolutely slavely. You cannot argue left or right. So they would write in these silly clauses. I've last seen it in Nigeria, where if you don't say give notice for a place which you're renting, and of course to rent a place you have to pay about 3 months deposit, 2 months, 3 months. Sometimes you need a guarantor. They have a housing shortage, and they have it because they don't trust anybody. They probably look in the mirror every day. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people who actually do them in it, and good for them if they do it. But they have clauses there which say that you have to give notice, say 3 months before. If you don't, and let's say you give 2 months and 28 days notice instead of 3 months, then you are liable for the rest of that rent, even if it's now over and you have left the place. But if it's empty, you have to bring somebody which they will approve, and they don't approve in terms of skin color. That's what they say. But in fact, a guy who's a student or a guy who's got a different skin color than a white skin color is going to have problems to rent anything there. Doesn't matter how much money he has. They just don't like it. Where racism is very apparent. They will deny it. I will live there. I'm from Africa. I'm telling you, you're racist. And you just have to continue paying that place until they get someone. Now, isn't that a nice system? They can't lose. Which against it, now you have the haves and the have-nots. Now, the one thing which Switzerland is famous for is its psychologists, for every reason in the book, simply because, you know, they need them. Now, one of their famous ones are actually Carl Jung. And Carl Jung wrote a book called Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. Now, go look at it, because in it, he speaks to Salome. Now, Salome was the dancing girl which impressed, I think, King Herodes so much that he said to her, if you want anything, I'll give it to you. And she demanded John the Baptist's head, and she got it. The man's head was actually removed from his body. I mean, he was chopped off. He was murdered. One of the great prophets, because of this woman. And according to Carl Jung, he's having all these conversations with this woman, as well as other people, dead people. Now, that is totally anti-Bible, by the way. It's totally anti-Christian beliefs. In fact, God told you never to speak to the dead because the dead are sleeping. So in actual fact, you're speaking to demons. You're not speaking to the actual thing you're speaking to, or you think you're speaking to. So that just shows me what nonsense is psychiatry, really. If Carl Jung impresses them, then God knows what else will impress them. If you read about, want to read about this incident, you can go and read Codename Rebecca 65, Codename Wednesday 7, Oath of Evil, The War on Protestantism. This other fellow GMJ wrote about it quite a lot, where he speaks about this black magic crap of speaking to your forefathers. It's totally anti-Bible. It's spiritualism. It's ancestor worship. It's from Satan. And, well, they let me talk about their churches. Every little town there, like a little small little community, actually do have a church. And they have different cantons. Some are Protestant, some are Catholic. The churches are empty. I believe the statistics will tell you that the average age of the people who go to church is about 70 years old. The young people are totally atheistic. Most of them, they don't care. People go to church to take pictures. And then they actually have a church tax. Yes, if you're Protestant, the state will take 10% of your money. If you're Catholic, they will take 15% of your money. And I have a huge problem with that. I have a huge problem with the state. Start getting involved with church. Why? Because that holy separation between church and state must never be broken. It will be broken. If you read Oath of Evil, The War on Protestantism, you'll see how it's been broken right now. We're heading towards a new world order with one church, one religion, controlled by Rome. You don't believe me? Go and read the book, 700 pages, and many, many other books as well. We will warn you about this, give you all the details you need. Which brings me to Sunday laws. They have something called Sunday laws or blue laws. And if you go to if you go to the Legacy Legal, you will find me speaking about that there. That is like the old South Africa, where you have, on a Sunday, everything is closed. I don't know if you guys still remember it. I think it was about until 1982, 83. You could not get anything open on a Sunday. Perhaps the Portuguese Home Office cafe there in the corner was open, but really not the rest of the people. Everything was closed because it's a day of rest. In fact, it's the day of the Lord. It's not the Sabbath. It is the Roman Catholic system of moving from the Sabbath to the day of the Lord, which is Sunday. So we have a fourth commandment tell you to have your Sabbath at the end of the week, which is the Saturday. They moved it to the first day of the week, which is the Sunday. And Sunday means it is the day of the sun god. In fact, the Sabbath issue is a very, very big deal because it is the mark of the beast. Now, if you don't believe me, if you think I'm being silly, go and read the Bible and go and read these books I've just mentioned. You will find dozens and dozens of pages explaining why I say these things to you. So it's a country which, despite this canton we were in, board Protestant, actually follows the Catholic doctrine of Sunday laws. Pathetic. Really pathetic. And then I want to go back to people saying to me, it's such a beautiful country. And I told you about the cigarettes lying around everywhere. Now, the other thing which is also lying around everywhere is cow dung. Koos. You can't walk in those bloody mountains, even if you want to, and I don't want to. I find actually mountains to be dreadful. I grew up in Namibia in places where there's no mountains. I don't like mountains. You find cow dung. Oh my word, it stinks. It's really not nice. And then, of course, they have this wonderful thing they call a fondue, which is basically just cheese and wine mixed together with bread, which they charge a lot of money for. It's not fit for human consumption, it's rubbish. And you will never find this was having a meal without drinking his wine. Why? Because he has to do it. His food is that bad. Or probably that's the only way he can relax. Shame, I have to pray for them. But I'm not a wine drinker, and I'm not impressed with wine drinkers either. But let us get serious here. I mean, I've been talking about my own experiences here, but let's see. It is said that a man shall be known by his friends. I think Donald Trump was one of those who said it. You look at who's America's friends, Saudi Arabia, banned the Bible, by the way. One of the worst repressive regimes in the world, and Sunni, and one of the countries which supports Muslim terrorism right across the world, including in Mozambique right now. We know this, it's in the GMJ books. I can defend myself if you want to argue with me. Those are your friends, and you'll be known by your friends. But let us look at the friends of Switzerland. You know, this neutral country. It's not neutral. There's nothing neutral about Switzerland. I'll get to that just now. We know that Davos is a place in Switzerland where Klaus Schwab, the idiot, and the rest of the world leaders, all of them, World Economic Forum people, as well as the occultists, big business people, all of them meet there. And just now, just before I made this video, they were all there. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair, interesting fellow that, used to be a great Protestant, and then, guess what? After being kicked out as a Prime Minister, he became a Catholic. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a Catholic. Don't misunderstand me. It's the system which I have a problem with. Again, you can read the GMJ books why. But the Catholic as a person, I have no problem with whatsoever. It's just fascinating to me that he was in charge of a great Protestant country, the UK, of England anyway, in the old days, not anymore, not at all. It's an atheist country now. Then he changes his religion to his wife's. Why at that stage, Mr. Blair? Or Sir Tony now, you know, he's a member of a garter. One of the highest, probably the highest honors you can get under the UK system. Why? What did he do? It has to do with the occult. Also, there was former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Merkel is the one who said, who admitted in public now, that the Ukraine peace accords of 2014 was actually a fake accord just to get the country to rearm and to be able to defend it against Russian aggression. Now, I don't want to go into that, but it shows to me that there's no honor. French President Emmanuel Macron. Funny person that as well, because he came from nowhere. He just appeared, and he's one of those also who have his Freemason signs with him all the time, you know, the glasses like that, a stupid little handshake, all of these things. You have to wonder who these people really report to. Then there was the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, or whatever she's called, the one who's with Governor Gavin Newsom of California. She and this fellow, most of, well, everyone I called here out now was members of a Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum's Global Leaders for Tomorrow. And funny enough, except for Blair, all of them were the ones with the most draconian COVID lockdowns. Isn't that a pattern? I'm just asking. And also there on the list of these global leaders are Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Pete Buttigieg, I don't even know how to say his name, a small town mayor who came from nowhere in the last presidential election, which I don't know how fair it was, and I don't care actually. But he just came from nowhere like Macron, and trust me, you will know more about him in the future. Also, there was a director of national US intelligence, Avery Lanes, a female known as Madame Torture. The head of MI6, Richard Moore, FBI Director Christopher Wray. What the hell are these people doing at Davos? And now we're all friends of Switzerland, yeah, obviously. And it also seems that the escort agencies there were doing very well. Now, yes, it's true, prostitution is legal in Switzerland. But guess what? It's mostly East European women who are there. And I know some of the quick-witted ones here will ask me, how do you know? Well, I do research. Not practical. I'm happily married. I don't do that type of thing you're thinking of with your dirty brain. But I do know. I speak to people and across the world, and it's mostly East European girls with women who are being abused into this. Most of them are probably trafficked, human trafficking. And they're doing a roaring business at Davos. You have to wonder, what caliber of man is this? It reminds me of the old National Party ministers, you know, they would arrive in France and then a few days later the head of French intelligence would call the guys at National Intelligence and say, please, we caught your minister in this and this warehouse. If your minister have a need for a certain kind, we can arrange it in private. It's pathetic. And then they sit on the church banks, you know, waar die NG Kerk met hulle vroom gesig is. It's contemptuous, man. You will be known by your fruits. And let's talk further about it. And Davos, they wanted about 5,000 police and Swiss Army people to actually take care of these people. You know, some things are more equal. I have to laugh because if you trust on the Swiss Army and police to protect you, you're really stupid. They're very bad in security, they're bad at anything anyway. I think that almost everybody who listened here, who was listening to me now, has killed more people than what the Swine Army has combined in 400 years. Okay, there might be some noise here coming now. Rebecca has to take a shower here and I have to get this done. The shower is right next to the studio. Normally we don't do that, but we're still building the hotel here. And in about 20 minutes from now, these people are going to arrive to start really building, making noise. So I have to carry on. Just forgive me about that. I want to speak about the Swiss Army quickly. If you've ever seen a pathetic little summer camp in your life, it's the Swiss Army. It's impossible to actually describe how bad they look to me. You know, I look at the soldier in a different eyes than most people. I want to see experience. I want to see a lot of things. I don't see any in there. I see a komslapgatte who's just there. They will tell you they are fantastically good, but they can't prove it because they haven't been in a war for so long. There's nothing good about them. They can't march, they can't shoot, they can't do anything. Now, yes, there's people here who will say to me, of course they can shoot. Look at their shooting ranges and every guy's got a rifle. Well, yes, everyone has a rifle, but they don't have ammo anymore. But he does have his rifle. It's old, at least 20, 30 years old. And I will refer you to that great occultist, Winston Churchill, Freemason, 33-degree Freemason. Yes, he was that as well. And of course, he's a man who said there's no life after death. It's just blackness. He's quite right. That's what it is for him. And he's also a guy behind the United Nations. He's not the hero you people think he is. You should read my books. We exposed quite a bit about Winston Churchill. But he did say a few things which make sense. And one of the things he did say was that militias don't win wars. He said that after Dunkirk. Quite right. A militia cannot win a war. An army win a war. So they do have their shooting ranges and they do have to shoot a certain grouping every year. But let me tell you just how much crap. Unless you are actually doing combat type of shooting or you're doing skirmishing, whatever, training for war, lying there on the shooting range, taking a few pot shots once a year is not making you a crack shot in my eyes. It means nothing. You're going to crack off the moment that people shoot back at you. I'm not impressed. I think if that ever happens, you're going to smell the brown pants a mile away. I'm not impressed with the Swiss Army. There's nothing impressive about this. Yes, we do have bunkers everywhere in every building. That to me is the defeatist. You don't live in 1918 anymore. I was in Moscow a few years ago. I was speaking to a few people there. And they showed me, they actually told me, gave me a briefing on how they will take Switzerland in less than 3 weeks. Because we're really not in 1918 anymore. It's not going to help you to bunker down and to think you can't be taken. There's a different plan, which I will not reveal. And as a Christian, I have to say, I hope it never happens, but that country can be taken in a few weeks. It's really not a major issue. Even their own general staff, by the way, about a year ago, published a report to say they will not last more than 2 weeks against the first-tier army. That's their own assessment. So why they are so proud of their army, fuck knows, I don't know. In fact, I spoke to quite a few of their former soldiers those who did their national service. None of them were patriotic. All of them thought it was a big joke. During COVID, about 500 of them got caught up with their medical battalion. They were complaining so much it was just not funny. Then you see the other friend they have, of course, is the UN. The UN is there at Geneva. I've seen the place, it's disgusting. Once again, you have to read the GMJ books, the ones I mentioned, Oath of Evil particularly. It is beyond belief how many occult signs you actually find in Switzerland. Every single one of their churches have these Freemason type of signs on them. Now that's a language. You really have to learn to understand what I'm talking about. Freemasonry, people will tell you, is a Western Protestant thing. In fact, it's not. It's controlled by the Jesuit order, and it's controlled from Rome. You don't believe me? Well, again, go and do some research. The fact is, you shouldn't be finding this type of occult and Freemasonry signs in any church, because it's opposing God. Their God is the sun god or some other deity they have. It's not the Christian God. It's definitely not Jesus, our Savior. Definitely not. It's anti. It's Satanism. That is what the occult is. And then we're actually quite friendly to Nazis, we swine. During COVID, Rebecca and myself wrote 2 books. When does it end and where does it end? Very good books. It's about the Jewish army, which is not the Israeli army, Jewish army, in occupied Nazi France and Europe during the Second World War. It's actually based on real events, even though it's fictional. It is called When Does It End? And in the follow-up book, Where Does It End? And there might be a 3rd book also called Why Did It End? But I still have to write that one. Once I get to it, it will take me 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most. Takes you longer than that to write a book, man. There's something wrong. It's really not hard. And we're speaking about Switzerland and the Nazis, and there are very good books to read about that. I'm not the only author who did it. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I basically have 10, 15 minutes and then I have to be done here. But I want you to remember the name Francois Genoat. And this fellow was from Lausanne, Switzerland, and he was a great Nazi. In fact, he was such a great Nazi that he would always assist these Nazis escaping justice. His views and everything was very well known by Swiss counterintelligence. They actually have such things by an excellent police state. They knew about it. And despite that, besides being so neutral, they allowed it. They had no problem with it. And this fellow even defended Klaus Barbie. He paid for the lawyers to defend this fellow, which of course is his right. And at some stage he committed suicide, I think in 1996. Point I'm making here is that Switzerland didn't stop it at all. They just allowed it. And I want to speak quickly about their intelligence service as well. We'll get back to their Nazi issues. They have an espionage service called FIS, or Swiss Federal Intelligence Service. They're really not good, but they're good at liaison. And they keep files, of course, on everybody. They came out in 1989, they already had files on something like 900,000 people, which was 1 in every 20 Swiss people and 1 in every 3 foreigners. They obviously have files on me too. What is in those files would be very interesting for me to find out, because I think I don't really know. It brings me back to that colonel I was speaking to when I walked out of an embassy. But the thing is, I have zero legal basis to do that. I have actually no right to do it. And since 1989, it got so much worse. By 2010, they got caught out again. We've had now another 200,000 people on their files. And it's funny that the ones which they spy upon most, except now for the foreigners, would be those who criticize the army. The nuclear power plant, they have almost nothing. I think they got one or two. And trade unionists, they don't like these people, because it's a corporate country. They had no successes which I know about. It's actually pathetic. They prevented nothing. They had one or two guys which they sort of trapped some Muslim guys into committing acts of terror. Probably got information from somebody else. And so they can't really deal with it. In fact, if there's a problem in Switzerland, like a hostage situation, it's probably a French army or French police unit which will come and help them. They do have like a special forces unit in their army, probably trained by NATO units, so they're pathetic. And there's only about a company of it, which isn't enough. In a serious terrorist attack, they're going to fold. And I've been around these Muslim terrorists for a long time. Now, I want to say that when I say that, I mean Islamic terrorism. And a very, very small percentage. I'm not talking about a lot of people here. Muslims in general are very good people. In fact, my first late wife was a Muslim woman. And we loved each other very much. She was a wonderful person, and she was modern. She fully understood what stood in the Quran, and she knew that this Islamic way of thinking is totally wrong. That traces back, by the way, to the Sunnis, and that traces back to Saudi Arabia. That's where your Islamic terrorism comes from. Saudi and Pakistan. They are the big countries for that. Not Iran, by the way. Again, look at who's America's big friends. But anyway, this FIS, the Swiss intelligence, they don't really want to rock the boat. But they are very much under the influence of the Americans. They got caught out not long ago. There's a Swiss company who makes encryption devices, there's for diplomatic codes, things like that. Then it came out this was actually a front. It was nothing but a front for the CIA. Which meant that all the countries, mostly third world, who bought this Swiss quality encryption machine, where actually had the mails and the diplomatic mails and things read by the CIA or NSA, one of them, at will. Now, your problem with that is that it's not neutral. It's not neutral. And the Swiss are not neutral in any sense of the word. I don't know why people think Swiss is a neutral country. Just look at their actions against Russia right now. What they ought to have done is to say, we're neutral, we don't have anything to do with this is not our concern, and that would have been fine. But instead they joined the European Union in every single one of their sanctions against Russia. And at Russia, I can tell you it's a good note of it. They also fly, they just bought the F-35 rubbish from the US. I don't know when they'll get it. It's supposed to replace their F-18 Hornets, not the Super Hornet even. It's an old F-18 Hornet. Those things are so old. God knows how it's still flying. It's a big joke in Switzerland, actually. They were supposed to do an air show, and then they went to the wrong village, at the wrong valley. And of course, they did the air show at the wrong place. There were no one there. Quite funny, right? But they're proud of the Army Air Force, and during World War II, they would attack all aircraft which strayed into their space, including Allied, but mostly German Nazi aircraft. They would attack them. Most of these aircraft were anyway by that time shot up and unable to defend themselves. But nevertheless, the Swiss were very proud of the fact that nobody invaded them. Let me tell you, no one invaded you because you're not flipping worth invading. There's nothing there to take. If a first-tier country actually wanted to take Switzerland, I already told you we'll do it in a few weeks. I'm not going to reveal how they will do it. I know exactly how to do it, and I hope never to see it. And then they also struck a deal. In the 1970s, early 70s, there was a lot of aircraft hijackings. Now, this is well known. You can go and research it once again. They deny it, but where there's smoke, there's definitely a fire, as we say. At one stage, a Swiss aircraft got hijacked and it got blown up. There were no casualties, and it never happened again. Why? Why didn't it happen again, if you think about it? Because the Swiss isn't well liked. I mean, nobody really likes the Swiss. I'm sorry. Nobody really likes you. It happened that they were not hijacked anymore by the PLO, Yasser Arafat's people, and anybody else, because it is said that one of their cabinet ministers actually went and made a deal. Yes, went and made a deal with the terrorists to launder their money. And then from there on, they sort of bought protection for Swiss Air. Your problem with that, once again, is you're not neutral, because now you're laundering terrorism money. And we know what happened with the Nazis, because it came out in the late 90s, there was a lot of pressure on Switzerland to release the Jewish money, which the Jews has put into Switzerland for safekeeping, and then, of course, they were murdered in the concentration camps. Now, that is something which is actually close to my heart, because my own grandmother fled from Germany, I believe, in the 1936, around about there, perhaps before, 32, came to the Union of South Africa, married my grandfather. My own father was born out of it, and she lost all her family in the camps. My own wife, Rebecca, from a Jewish family, lost all her family members who did not go to America, all of them in the camps. This is personal. And a lot of those Jews were wealthy people, and they left a lot of money in Switzerland, in the banks, and through the years, the Swiss absolutely refused to honor those payments to the survivors. They just wouldn't do it. Why not? Because they swine. You know, they swine. Unless you treat them like swine, they don't understand life. And so America put pressure on them from Bill Clinton's side. And guess what? They cracked. They cracked. They cracked so much, actually, that they paid out something like 2 billion, not million, billion. So this money they paid out to Jewish charities. We did, I don't know what with it. And fascinating, we shouldn't have paid more than 300-400 million, actually. That's what could be proven. But it showed to you that the moment that the big country started putting pressure on the Swiss, they cracked with their pants, bent forward, touched their toes, and just paid out. It's shameful. I actually feel sorry for them, but it shows again the lack of manhood. Then people will also say to you, it is such a democratic society. Now, I've already told you that it's not democratic at all. It's not normal. If you're a swine and you're listening to me and you're getting angry, good, means I'm reaching you. It's not normal for the police to know where you live. Hello? It's not normal. Trust me. It's not normal, and it shouldn't happen. Even when we left Switzerland, I had to go to the police again, or the canton, same thing, and then report to them that I'm actually leaving Switzerland. Can you think of anything more ridiculous? I'm not a citizen. I'm nothing of you. I can go and as I please. Yet I had to go and say, on this date I'm leaving. And guess what? You have to do that exactly 30 days before. Obviously, this has to do with a filing system which we're keeping. You also have to leave your name on the mailbox. So there's no security. Anybody can come and see who you are. The one thing we're very proud of is that every citizen have a right to vote on major decisions. So they would send out like a vote, and then it's sent by mail to every single person, which is also scary because then they know where every voter lives. Again, they don't see it as strange. I see that extremely, extremely worrying. And then they word it in such a way that you can't actually vote negatively. or you can't vote positively. In other words, whatever they want, they word it in that sentence, in that line. So during COVID, they had the following, they would say, yes, okay, you can vote now and you can tell us whether you agree with our COVID measurements or COVID measures, sorry. And, but remember now, if you vote no, if you say you don't agree, you know, we're not going to support you financially anymore. Whoop. Whoop. Immediately they got what they want. So that is just so much bullshit. It is totally not true that it's a democratic system. It's not. There's nothing democratic about Switzerland. Go against the rules and see what happens. And during lockdown, they actively encouraged everybody to spy on their neighbors, and many did. Also, they have cameras absolutely everywhere. Okay, now we're back at this thing. This is a country with privacy laws. Oh my word, if you have such good privacy laws, please tell me why you have cameras everywhere. No, you can't. You can't answer me that. But you don't have cameras where it's actually needed. Let me explain. So we live in this flat, this building, and there's this crazy, there's no other word, drunk Swiss man living in the corner. And he takes a disliking in us. I don't know why. Is it because Rebecca's Jewish? Yeah, I wonder. Perhaps I should report this to the Jewish agencies, you know. But anyway, so he starts putting locks, glue in our locks in the front door. Now, every time you go out, you can't get back into the place because it's glued up. And of course, it costs a lot of money every time to repair, but we don't care. We go to the Reggie, that's what they call the renting services, a whole bunch of assholes. And we go to them, they have to repair it, but it's a lot of nuisance for us, of course. And we don't really know what is this about. So I put a camera on, put a doorbell on with a hidden camera, catch the guy red-handed in the middle of the night that he's doing it. Because the idiot is so stupid, he doesn't know what infrared. He doesn't understand that we can catch him, we can even record him. So we caught him. Go to the police. It's a criminal act, you know, to cause damage to other people's property. And there I realized that the Canton Vaud police is probably some of the most stupid people I've ever seen in my life. They are so superbly equipped. They look like Rambo himself, you know, they have all these equipment. But most of them are dwarfs. I don't think there's a difference between the women police and the male police. They're all at the same level. And they're very proud of the fact that every one of them has did this summer camp at the Swiss Army before. And I don't really know how good they are with normal crime. I can only tell you what happened to us. Now, I look at the policemen with different eyes since I was one myself for years. And I can tell you I was so unimpressed with these people. In the first place, they wouldn't accept the video evidence because we're not allowed to take pictures of people damaging our property. Okay. Then secondly, they say we have to go and sort it out with this fellow himself because we obviously did something to him. You see, that is the Swiss way. That's how the way the swine thinks. Because they are cowards and they do not want to take responsibility for anything, they always put the blame on you. So now it's your fault. You did something, so that guy did something to you. You know, that's like blaming the victim. It's like saying, Madame, you know, you perhaps should not have walked down the street with a low-cut dress. That excited this guy so much, and that's why he raped you. Can you see how flippant, stupid that argument is in law, and it's not even rational? And we don't even know this guy. Then they came up and they said, okay, we have to go and speak to him. So Rebecca says, look, if Chris has to go and speak to him, that guy's going to end up in hospital. Very true. My way of speaking to such people is knock on his door, open the door, hit him with a forehead, kick the hell out of him, and then he understands life. Nothing wrong with violence in certain times. That's a South African way. It's a thing. It's a very, very good way, actually. It works. But now, after a bit of argument, no, they will now actually go and talk to this guy. They still don't want to open a case. So we do go and talk to this guy and call us and say, yes, he says you people slammed the doors and that's why he did it. Again, it's our fault. What can I say? We slammed the doors. In fact, we didn't slam the doors. It's absolute bullshit, but it shows you how the Swiss police think. Then it's even more fascinating. Once we parked with our vehicle in front of the school because we were moving stuff. And now one of them come along. I won't say what color or race he is because I think he's actually a likable chap, even if he's, oh my word, let me tell you the story. So he arrives there now, he wants to give us a parking ticket, even though we're there legally, and he can't do it. Rebecca tells me he can't do it, and she won't accept the ticket, blah, blah, blah. I approach from the back, I'm standing behind him. Now, I'll tell you, in my time in the police, you would never be able to approach me from the back and stand and looking at me like that, because I would pick it up. But this guy is in his own world, because he doesn't expect any problems. He doesn't expect any violence. I don't know what they're going to do. Really, I don't know what they're going to do if they're up against violent criminals. Probably piss in their pants and run away. So I approach this guy, stand looking at him, but he doesn't pick me up. So I go and stand in front. After a while, as the matter is settled, it's just a verbal warning, which is bullshit anyway, because we're not illegally parked to begin with. And I say to him, look, I'm an ex-policeman. Do you mind, as a colleague, can I ask you a few questions? Tell me, what firearm do you wear? He doesn't know what firearm he wears. He doesn't know he's got a Glock. I say, how much ammunition do you have with you? He doesn't know. And I can tell you, in my time, if I ask you how much ammo you have, and you cannot tell me how much ammo you have, God will not have mercy on your soul. I need to know exactly how much ammo I have with me. I need to know exactly what ammo I have with you, because we loaded different magazines for different shifts. If you work at night, you might have, say, 4 tracers in the beginning, then you have one ball, 1 tracer, and then in the middle of the magazine, you'll have like 4 tracers, and the last 3 rounds is 3 tracers. But while we're shooting, you're counting your shots. That is good training. They don't have it. It brings me back to the standing or lying on a shooting range and pinging away and thinking you're now a soldier or a policeman. Man, you're nothing. You don't know what you're talking about. The other way which they got caught out on neutrality is that in 1940, as France fell to Nazi Germany, and I know since then there was all these stories about French white flags, the French, they run away. In fact, the French doesn't run away. In Africa, I worked in Africa in the shadows. I can tell you the only country we actually respected very well, besides ourselves, was France, because the legionnaires doesn't talk. They arrive there and cut your crown jewels off, and then they start talking. It's not like the Americans or the Brits. In fact, I think up to now, since 10, 12 years ago, there was only one successful rescue of a hostage in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, by the American and Brits special forces. And even that was like pure luck and nothing else. And the reason for that is because simply they don't know what they're doing. Well, the French had quite a bit of success. You have to give it to them. But in 1940, France was defeated. The Brits has run home. Yes, they ran out of Dunkirk. They ran as quickly as they could. They left their weapons behind. It wasn't the only evacuation. Even Churchill said it was a disaster. And guess what? The agreement with the French government at that stage was to go back to France and fight further. They were not supposed to stay in England until 1944, when they went back under command, ultimately, of an American General Eisenhower, and there were about 45 Canadian and American soldiers for every 1 Brit. They were supposed to go back and keep on fighting. The French soldiers who got evacuated at Dunkirk went back within a week, and they all ended up, of course, in a prisoner of war camp. So the Brits had very bad faith there. Again, you won't read this in the history books, but perhaps you should read the GMJ books. You will find out these things. And so the Germans captured documents, and they captured the documents which they captured showed clearly that France and Switzerland, under the Swiss Army general in charge, was conniving. They had defensive plans worked out in case Germany attacks them. And they were even building these defensive plans. They were like ramparts and things they were building them. Now again, you can say to me, okay, so what? Well, neutrality. There is no neutrality. It's the same which they did now, as I've explained to you now. Same way did when they started laundering the terrorist money so they don't get attacked. Same which they did with the encryption machines. Same that they now did conspiring with another country against another country. You see the pattern. Switzerland is not a neutral country at all. So this story of Swiss neutrality is the biggest bullshit I've heard in a long, long time. The other problem which I have with them is they did deny about 25 to 30,000 Jews entry into Switzerland during the war, simply because they're Swiss. If you don't have a right visa, well, the Nazis can come and kill you here in front of me. I don't care. You don't have a right visa, mate. Sorry. So they did deny about 20 to 30,000 Jews. Those Jews all died. Go and read when does it end. It is described in there. There were one police chief. He did very well. He started issuing visas to these Jews to get them through. This poor guy was worked out completely. He was absolutely hammered. And so much so that he died as a poor man. They removed him of his post. They basically made it impossible for him to work. These things happened. And yes, they did take a lot of Jews. We have to say that too. I know the swine listening here will now probably try to defend themselves. I want you to go and look at Dr. Roof. Dr. Roof made a movie. Dr. Roof is the sex therapist or something in the US and New York, a Jewish woman. She fled to Switzerland as, I think she was 12, 13 years old. Her parents took her out of Nazi Germany in 1942, around about there. They died in the camps. She got to Switzerland. And not long ago, there was a movie out, I think, on Netflix on her life. Go and look what she has to say about Switzerland and how Switzerland actually treated her. You'll be ashamed. If you're a swine and you're listening here, you'll be ashamed. They denied these children, the female children, now young women, they denied them an education. Why do you think they did that? Because they have a superior attitude, you know, that the man is always in charge. After all, it is a country which gave a woman, females the right to vote, so much later than any other country. Even today there are protests. I've seen them, where females are protesting about this thing that the father figure is everything and nothing else. That's probably the reason why Dr. Roof was denied an education. You don't believe me? Go and watch the movie. And talking about Hollywood myths, Sound of Music, no, that's nonsense. They did not flee to Switzerland. They did not run over the mountains. They took a train to Italy. And by the way, the nun there, by that stage, had 3 other children already with this guy. So just so much Swiss nonsense again. And by the way, this commander of them, of the Swiss forces, who colluded with France against Germany, was General Henry Gusan. He's something of a legend there. I visited his house on Lake Geneva. Fascinating man, but by no means he was a good general. He was still stuck in 1918. What his plan was, and it still is today, it won't work, I'm warning you again, is just to fight a defensive battle. In other words, blow the bridges, fall back where you can, then run to your mountains and hide in there in pre-prepared bunkers, and then just surrender territory. Try it. See what's going to happen to you. After I made this video, I thought of a few more things to say about Switzerland. And before you watching here, quite a few people did also. Some of them even lived in Switzerland for a few years. And guess what? They all agree with me. In fact, I have more horrible stories, and I might even broadcast that as well. This is not going to be the only episode on Switzerland or Swineland. Again, I have to say to you, I feel that the truth must come out, and if I've hurt some feelings, you know what, I don't care. I think the Swiss should be treated as Swiss, and since they are such tough people, according to themselves. It's actually funny, you know, a short man is short everywhere. It's really disappointing, I would say. But anyway, let us not go into that topic. I have to laugh. I, of course, am over 6 feet. And I have Jewish blood and I'm from Africa, man. I don't have such problems. But I think a lot of us Swiss men do. I've actually heard it firsthand from many of their companions. Let us talk about the Baptists. Now, you know the Baptist. It's one of the largest church movements, Protestant church in America, right across the world. Now, at first they were known as the Anabaptists, and basically what they did wrong is to say that being Christian as a baby is not correct according to the Bible. By the way, we believe it too, as Seventh-day Adventists. And the reason for that is quite logical. As a baby, you're not capable of making informed decisions. So your parents made that decision, and even the way the christening took place and is taking place, especially in the Afrikaner churches and most of the churches, is actually the same symbolism and same ritual which was used by the ancient occult organizations. It's a Roman Catholic thing. It came over from them. The sprinkling of water. In fact, if you read the Bible, you'll find out that when John the Baptist, who we spoke about before, with Carl Jung, if you remember, the idiot, when he was baptizing people, he wasn't baptizing by sprinkling water in their faces, murmuring some kind of Latin crap, which nobody understands, on purpose. No, in fact, he was putting them under the water and bringing them up. That's what he did with our Lord Jesus, our Savior. And so the Anabaptists studying the Bible in Switzerland, in Swineland, many years ago, more than 200 years ago, 250 years, they realized that if you want to be baptized Christian, you have to be done as a grown-up after you made that decision, and your entire head is down under the water, and then you're coming up again. That's the biblical way of doing it. And so they started doing it. And of course, the swine around them, not only, I have to say that, not only the Catholics, cantons, only the Protestant ones also, much to their shame. I've been in those cantons, by the way. They started drowning these people. They would catch them, and then they drowned them. They murdered them. That's what it comes to. That is what happens when church and state starts mixing. It should never happen. So anyway, a lot of these Anabaptists then fled to the US, and they became a Baptist movement. But let us not forget where their harm and where their persecution started. I think the Swiss has to answer that. And then they also have very bad sportsmanship. We once went to some youth Olympic Games or something, I don't know what crap, they always have something on. And it was ice skating. Now, of course, ice skating to me is not a sport, it's not even an art, it's something you go with because you have to. But I sat there and I quickly realized something. When other nations were performing their routine, the swine would sit there quiet. They wouldn't say a word. They just sit there and glare. Or as far as they can glare, of course, you know, they got small things. And when their own people come up, they erupt. It erupted. It is like you can't believe. They were just totally partisan. They was like totally for this guy, totally against the other guy. They would even boo him. I've never seen such bad sportsmanship in my life. In fact, I walked out after about 20 minutes. I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I think of the times, you know, which we were on a rugby field or cricket field, or tennis court, even in a boxing match. And you had a few blows and you had a few things going. You always shook hands afterwards. Part of the game, no problem. Fair. That's what the grown-up will do. That is what the man will do, but not the swine. They don't act like that. The other strange way they have is whenever they make an appointment, you will remember there was this creep who put glue in our locks, and I caught him, and you remember the police wouldn't act. Anyway, they would always write a letter. So even if plumber is coming to visit you, this guy would actually write you a letter and say, no, they're coming on that day. And then sometimes he actually arrives and sometimes not, because I've never heard of not wasting paper and trees and things like that. I mean, it is just words to them. But what is more annoying than that is actually that they, whenever they address somebody, let's say now they want Rebecca to pay taxes on the schools, they don't write to her, they write to me. I'm the man. Even though we married out of community, even though her business, not my business, I'm not the director there, I've got nothing to say there, they write to me. How pathetic is that? You know, you're taking women so low by doing that. But that is also part of their problem in life. And again, goes back to tiny, you know. And then lastly, the one thing you get in Switzerland all the time is mail. Now, you don't want mail from the government or from the local authorities because it is just money. Every 3-4 months, they would want 3,000-4,000 franc in taxes, and then a month or 5 later, they say, oh no, sorry, we made a mistake, here's 1,000 back. They beyond belief, and remember, you get nothing back from them anyway. But what you also find is NGOs, these non-governmental organizations. 90% of them are fronts for the CIA, by the way. And what good they do, I don't know. I mean, I just have to look at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and shake my head in disgust. And so they send you these most beautifully made, it's very expensive, these most beautiful made posters, and you always find this hungry African child standing there with his big eyes. Man, you have to feel sorry. And so, of course, you would donate. Why not? If you can donate. We already spoke about the 10% and 15% tax they have on religion. And then you go to the actual business premises, and that's where you stop donating. And I will ask you, besides what I'm already asking you is never to support anything Swiss, is don't support those NGOs. You will be disgusted if you see where they live, their buildings, their offices. It's just in the best of areas. It's fantastically pretty. It's right there on Lake Geneva. Most expensive what you can get. And they live the high style. So they take your money, and if they give more than 1 or 2% to the actual charity which you think you're supporting, you're damn lucky. I'm sure they take even more than that. It is one of the most pathetic scams I've ever seen in my life. All right. As I said, I made this clip afterwards, so let's carry on with what I said originally. But let's talk about a few good things about Switzerland. You know, we can't be that negative all the time. I've already said to you, and I can carry on like this for weeks. And I really dislike them. Good things about Switzerland, because it's a rich country. If you go to something like Cash Crusaders, and they have them everywhere, you can get bargains. You can buy a good quality camera like we did for our studio for about half the price which you would pay new. That's very nice. The other good thing about Switzerland is the train to Geneva Airport. It's really nice to get out of the country. I felt great relief. I have never, or let me rather say this, I've taken an oath to God I will not return to Switzerland. I'll have nothing to do with that country whatsoever. They disgust me. I'm positively neutral against them, and that is a dangerous thing. Simply because it means if I'm aware of any terrorist attack against Switzerland, I will not tell them. I will let it happen. At the same time, before I'm accused of hate speech, I'm not wanting anybody to do that. But I myself am neutral. I will not help them. I don't care. Even if I find a Swiss person in dire straits somewhere, I'll walk past him. I'll do to them what they did to me. Eye for an eye. That's a good thing. And I don't want to hear stories from you people to say, no, we should forgive and carry on. I did forgive. I don't carry grudges. I'm just telling you, In my eyes, they don't exist. That's how much I dislike them. And no Swiss person will ever get a chance to talk on legacy, as long as I'm in charge. And I'm not interested in making friends with them either. I'm quite sure there'll be good Swiss people somewhere. You know what? Good for them. Very grateful. Don't introduce them to me. The mere accent will trigger me. That's how much I dislike them. But let us end with a Swiss joke. How do you make a Swiss roll? Well, you kick him down the mountain. And that, my friends, is the episode on Switzerland. Thank you for watching. And if you have any comments, you're welcome to leave them here. And again, if I can ask you something, do not support the Swiss or Swiss products in any sense of the word. They are not worthy of your money until they change. And I don't see them changing ever. They are that lost. Actual fact, we should pray for them.